Toronto, autumn 1999. The city wore a blazing cloak of maple leaves. Along Queen Street, the trees glowed golden. The cold breeze sent leaves spiraling gently through the air. The city shimmered with lights, modern with its glass skyscrapers, yet timeless in the red-bricked corners where the scent of hot coffee lingered. That night, Nathan Phillips Square glowed like an open-air stage, its fountain's water glistening, mirroring neon lights, and the faint moon above. Daniel Moreau stood there, his right hand clutching a small velvet box so tightly his knuckles turned white. At 24, tall, with sharp, intelligent eyes, so confident in front of investors he now trembled like a boy facing his first exam. He wore a dark grey wool coat over a black turtleneck. In his pocket, along with the ring box, his old phone buzzed relentlessly with unread messages. He ignored them. Tonight was not for work. Tonight was for love. Naomi Johnson stood a few steps away, her brown knit dress fluttering in the wind. Her wavy black hair caught the lamplight, forming a gentle halo. Her wide, dark eyes shone with resolve and intelligence, and the faint smile on her lips was enough to set Daniel's heart racing. Naomi, only 21, was in pre-med, nurturing her dream since childhood to become a doctor. "You know," Daniel began, his voice rough with nerves, "every time I look at this city, I think about the future. All those lights, all that energy. It's like they're whispering that anyone can make their dreams come true, if they dare." Naomi laughed softly, a clear, ringing sound in the wide square. "You always talk about dreams and plans, but to me, dreams don't live in numbers or contracts. They live in patients' eyes, in the breaths of children who need saving. I want to touch that with my own hands." Daniel fell silent. He knew her dreams had always been different from his. She wanted to heal. He wanted to conquer. She believed in compassion, he in vision and profit. But tonight, he did not want to think of their differences. Tonight, he tried to bind their worlds together with a promise. He suddenly dropped to one knee. Naomi froze, eyes wide. Passersby stopped, some smiling, some pulling out small cameras. Daniel opened the velvet box. Inside, a small, clear diamond on a white gold band sparkled under the lights. "Naomi Johnson," Daniel said, his voice trembling but steady. "You've shown me that dreams aren't only in technology and numbers. I want to build a future with you where you heal people, and I connect the world. Will you marry me? Will you let me be the harbor for all your dreams?" Naomi's hand flew to her lips, her eyes brimming, her heart surged. "Daniel, I promise," he pressed on, "to do everything so you can become the doctor you've always dreamed of. I'll support your every step. Nothing will come between us." In the chill autumn breeze, Naomi nodded gently, whispering, "Yes, I will." Cheers erupted around them. Daniel slid the ring onto her finger with trembling hands, then rose to embrace her. Their kiss beneath Toronto's city lights, surrounded by the applause of strangers, was sweet and radiant, like an eternal vow. Spring 2000. Their wedding was held at the Fairmont Royal York, where history met grandeur. The grand hall glowed under crystal chandeliers, white roses adorned every corner, and a string quartet played a tender classical melody. Naomi wore a vintage gown restored from her grandmother's, each lace detail woven with family history. Daniel, in a black tuxedo, could not hide his nervous excitement, yet even in that sacred moment, his phone buzzed. He quickly silenced it, sliding it under the tablecloth when he caught Naomi's eyes. She said nothing, only squeezed his hand, reminding him that today was theirs alone. When they exchanged vows, Daniel looked into her eyes. "I promise to walk beside you, to make your dream our dream. I will love you, protect you, and lift every aspiration you pursue." His voice carried all the sincerity he could summon. Naomi replied, clear and steady, "I promise to love you in every season of life. I will not leave, through hardship or ease. I will build with you a life full of love that can reach the world." They exchanged rings, sealed with a kiss, amid applause and music. But even then, Naomi caught the flicker of Daniel's gaze at his glowing phone. A small seed of unease nestled in her heart, though she tried to ignore it. The reception that followed was lavish. Daniel's tech friends gathered, discussing Morotech's future investment, markets, shares, and IPOs. Naomi smiled politely and raised her glass, but felt like an outsider. She longed to speak of medicine, of patience, but no one asked. That wedding night, they stood by the window overlooking Lake Ontario. Moonlight spread across the water, reflecting the city lights. Naomi leaned on his shoulder, whispering, "I believe we'll change the world, you with your mind, me with my heart." Daniel squeezed her hand, kissing her hair. "We will, Naomi. It will all be ours." But even as he spoke, plans for company expansion, numbers, and investors crowded his thoughts. He reassured himself, love and ambition could coexist. The early months of marriage passed in rhythm, Naomi balancing pre-med classes, Daniel pouring his soul into Morotech. At first, they made time, shared dinners, evening walks. Gradually, however, Daniel's phone became inseparable. While Naomi spoke of lectures at breakfast, his eyes stayed glued to the screen. When she asked for a walk at night, he excused himself for meetings and plans. One winter night, snow falling outside their small apartment, Naomi prepared for her organic chemistry exam while Daniel pored over contracts. They sat at the same table, but in separate worlds. She hesitated, then said, "Today, my professor told me I have a knack for research. I'll take extra classes this summer to prepare for the MCAT." "That's great," Daniel replied without looking up. "Tomorrow I meet investors in New York. If it works out, Morotech will expand across North America." Naomi fell quiet. The words in her notebook blurred. For the first time, she felt her dream was only an echo. Drowned by his ambition, a small crack formed in her heart, subtle but sharp. Naomi cooked a simple dinner, roast chicken, mashed potatoes, and vegetables that Christmas. She longed for a warm evening, just the two of them. But Daniel took 3 calls from California in a row. Naomi gently said, "It's Christmas. Can it wait until tomorrow?" "Success doesn't take holidays, love." Daniel smiled, stepping out to the balcony. "This could change our lives." Naomi sat alone, eyes on the little tree glowing with colored lights. She whispered to herself, "We already have the life I want. We have each other. Why isn't that enough for you?" By the time Daniel returned, the food was cold. Naomi still smiled softly, but the crack inside her widened. And so, the marriage that began with a promise under Toronto's lights slowly took on the shade of unseen distances. Daniel, consumed by ambition. Naomi, clinging to love. They still held hands, still smiled, but deep within, spaces were opening, waiting to become chasms. Toronto in the early 2000s seemed to glow with a new wave of technology. Glass towers reflected the sunlight, and startup offices sprang up along the financial district like mushrooms after rain. Daniel Moreau appeared to have been born into that golden moment of history. Less than a year after their wedding, Morotech signed a contract with an American software conglomerate. The deal, worth millions of dollars, led the local press to hail Daniel as a rising star. His image appeared on the cover of a business magazine, a stern face, eyes gleaming with confidence, beneath the headline, "From Toronto to the World, Canada's New Generation of Entrepreneurs." Naomi sat in their small apartment one autumn morning, reading that article. She sipped her coffee, staring at the familiar yet unfamiliar face on the glossy page. This was her Daniel, the man who once knelt in Nathan Phillips Square and vowed to build a future with her, balanced between love and dreams. But he was also Daniel of the outside world, ready to devote every moment of his life to success. Naomi gently stroked his printed face, smiling with pride, though her heart stirred uneasily. That evening, when Daniel came home, he was still in his suit, his tie slightly askew after a long day. He entered with excitement, dropping a thick stack of documents on the kitchen counter. "Naomi, you won't believe this. We just closed the terms. If all goes well, next year we'll go public. Do you realize? With the first IPO, the company's value could increase 5-fold. Naomi quietly set down her anatomy notebook and looked up. "That's wonderful news, Daniel. I'm really proud of you." He wrapped his arms around her, but the embrace quickly dissolved into an enthusiastic monologue about expansion plans, a new office in Vancouver, and hiring more engineers. Naomi smiled, but behind his back, her eyes fell on the unfinished medical notes spread across the table. She had planned to tell him about her meeting with her supervisor, who encouraged her to apply for the research preparatory program, but she stayed silent. In the following months, Morotech exploded in growth. Daniel flew constantly between Toronto, New York, and even San Francisco. Each time Naomi saw him off at the airport, she watched his figure disappear beyond security, reminding herself to be patient. He was working hard for their future. Someday, when the company stabilized, he would remember his old promise. But the distance slowly became tangible. Evenings, Naomi studied alone in their silent apartment. Her desk was strewn with books, the desk lamp casting light on her tired yet determined face. She took notes diligently, focusing with all her strength, but a sense of emptiness lingered. Sometimes the phone rang, Daniel's name flashing on the screen, and her heart leapt. Yet when she answered, it was often his hurried voice. "I'm in a meeting, just calling to say I'll be late. Don't wait up." Naomi sat by the window one snowy night, watching white flakes dance outside. She decided to try, just once. When Daniel came in, she placed a cup of hot tea before him and said, "I just got my practice MCAT results. I scored pretty high. I think I'll apply to med school next year." Daniel set down the cup, nodding briefly, but his eyes never left the documents. "That's great. I'm happy for you. But Naomi, do you really think now is the right time? Our lives are changing. You already have everything. This apartment, the trips we could take, a future free of financial worry. Are you sure you want to bury yourself in 8 exhausting years of study instead of enjoying life?" His words cut like a cold blade. Naomi said nothing. To him, her dream was an unnecessary luxury, but for her, it was breath itself, the reason she woke each morning. A week later, Daniel hosted a lavish party to celebrate a new contract. The hotel ballroom glittered with expensive suits and sparkling champagne glasses. Naomi walked beside him in a sleek black dress that embraced her gentle grace. But in conversation after conversation, she was only a shadow. People crowded around Daniel, asking about strategy and discussing markets. She stood alone by the buffet, catching fragments like, "Moreau, you're a genius. Your wife must be so proud." She smiled faintly, but the smile felt empty. That night, on the drive home, she quietly asked, "Daniel, do you remember how we promised to build our dreams together?" He glanced at her, his eyes weary. "Naomi, I've never forgotten, but right now the company needs me. Everything I'm doing is for us." "For us or for you?" The question slipped out before she could stop it. The air in the car grew heavy. Daniel did not reply. By March 2001, Morotech was officially valued in the hundreds of millions. Daniel was invited to address a gathering of business leaders. Naomi sat in the audience, watching her husband stand on stage, the spotlight on his face. He spoke of vision, innovation, and a mission to connect the world. The hall erupted in applause. Naomi clapped too, but sorrow seeped into her heart. He was no longer the man who once kissed her under Toronto's lights. He had become a public figure, belonging to the crowd. After the event, Naomi tried to tell him she had been shortlisted for admission to a medical school in Ottawa. Daniel glanced at the letter, then gave a dismissive laugh. "Naomi, be realistic. We're at the peak right now. You already have everything. Med school at this point is a childish illusion." The words struck like lightning. Naomi froze. All her accumulated hope, all the old promises, shattered instantly. She searched his face for the trembling young man who once held out a ring beneath the square's open sky. But before her was only an ambitious man, with sharp eyes and a voice steeped in money and power. That night, Naomi lay with her back to him in bed. Daniel typed emails late into the night. She listened to the keystrokes, each one hammering her heart. Tears soaked her pillow. She realized the tiny crack had grown into a chasm, and the love she once believed could conquer all now teetered on the edge of ruin. In the months that followed, their marriage unraveled into days of estrangement. Daniel was rarely home, and when he was, his mind remained tethered to work. Naomi buried herself in her studies, but each time she picked up her pen, The image of her indifferent husband surfaced again. One morning, when Naomi tried once more to mention her application plans, Daniel sighed. "Naomi, you don't understand. This company is my child. It needs my full devotion. If you keep chasing that dream, I fear we won't have enough time for each other." Naomi looked at him, her eyes red. "We don't have time for each other anymore, anyway." Daniel fell silent. And so, from the dazzling light of success, darkness slowly enveloped their happiness. Naomi felt adrift in her own home, while Daniel grew further from the woman who had once been the reason he made vows beneath Toronto's sky. Her dream was belittled, their love pushed aside, and their old promise lay in fragments. Toronto lay under a bleak winter morning, the sky smothered by thick clouds, snow drifting down like cold, weightless dust. Naomi stood at the window of her high-rise apartment, clutching a small suitcase. Inside it, there wasn't much. A few changes of clothes, her notebook, the medical textbooks she still used for study, and a faded wedding photo. She gazed at her reflection in the glass, her face thinner, her eyes vacant yet glowing faintly with determination. Behind her, the apartment that once echoed with laughter was now eerily silent. The kitchen counter was cluttered with Daniel's company expansion plans. A suit jacket hung carelessly on the sofa, while his phone buzzed ceaselessly. The pings of incoming messages and the clipped voice of the answering machine formed a cold, mechanical soundtrack to Naomi's painful decision. The night before, they had fought bitterly. Naomi had tried one last time to convince Daniel that her dream of becoming a doctor mattered. She showed him her acceptance letter from a prestigious medical school, which she had guarded like a treasure, but Daniel barely glanced at it. He set it down and spoke in a tone Naomi had never heard before. "Naomi, stop deluding yourself. You already have everything: a wealthy husband, a comfortable life. What more do you want? Med school is nothing but a childish game, a pointless luxury. You should be grateful instead of chasing fantasies." Naomi froze. His words sliced through her heart like blades. She looked at him and no longer recognized the man who once knelt under the city lights, trembling as he promised a shared future. Who stood before her now? A cold businessman, eyes glinting with contempt, his voice dripping with arrogance. "You've forgotten," Naomi whispered. "Forgotten every promise beneath Toronto's sky. You're not the man I love anymore." Daniel was silent for a moment, then turned away with icy detachment. "If you can't accept this life, perhaps we have nothing to say." The next morning, Naomi packed her things. As the door closed behind her, a draft swept down the hallway. She pulled the suitcase along, each step heavy, yet her heart oddly light. Pain surged within her, but beneath it flickered a fragile sense of release. Naomi wandered through the streets of Toronto. She had nowhere to go. Her family was gone, her mother to cancer, her father even earlier. Daniel had once been her only family. Now he was gone too. That evening, she stopped at a cheap inn, a cramped room smelling of dampness, its bed creaking with the slightest touch. She sat down, opened her suitcase, and drew out the wedding photo. Tears welled as she stared at her own radiant smile from that day. She had believed love could conquer everything. Now the photo felt like nothing more than a slip of paper reminding her of a mistake. Days passed, Naomi drifting between sorrow and exhaustion. She tried to study, but her mind was fogged. Her small savings dwindled. On her way to the library one morning, her vision blurred, her steps faltered. Her body gave way. She leaned against a wall, heart racing, then collapsed. "Miss, are you okay?" A woman's voice rang with concern. Naomi faintly felt a pair of hands catch her before she hit the icy ground. When she opened her eyes, she saw the face of a brown-skinned woman with neatly tied hair and eyes full of kindness. "My name's Grace. I'm a nurse at Toronto General. You fainted on the street. Are you in pain? Dizzy?" Naomi shook her head weakly. I'm just tired. Haven't eaten properly in days." Grace frowned, helping her to her feet. "That won't do. I'm taking you to the hospital. Don't worry about the cost. We need to get you checked." Naomi wanted to refuse, but Grace's firm gentleness left no room for protest. In a small hospital clinic, Naomi lay on a bed with an IV in her arm. A doctor came in after reviewing her tests. He sat down and spoke gently. "Miss Johnson, aside from exhaustion and malnutrition, there's something else. Congratulations, you're pregnant about 6 weeks." Naomi froze. The words thundered in her ears. She sat up abruptly, eyes wide. "Pregnant? That's impossible. The doctor smiled softly. "The test is clear. You're going to be a mother." Naomi placed her hand over her still flat stomach. A flood of emotions crashed into her. Fear, confusion, and something else, a small, warm spark. Inside her was a life, part of Daniel, yes, but also part of herself. After the doctor left, Grace stayed by her side, holding her hand. "How do you feel?" Naomi's voice broke. "I don't know. I don't have a husband anymore. No family. How can I raise a child alone?" Grace squeezed her hand firmly. "Being a single mother isn't easy. But it isn't impossible. I've seen women face harder things and make it through. What matters is, do you want to keep the baby?" Naomi was silent. Daniel's cold eyes and scornful words flashed in her mind. He would never accept this child, but Naomi knew the choice was no longer his. She pressed her hand against her stomach and whispered, "You're not to blame. You're all I have left." Grace smiled, her gaze warm. "If you choose to keep the baby, I'll help you. I know someone who runs a shelter for women in tough situations. You'd be safe there. And our hospital has medical support programs. Naomi, you're not alone." Tears spilled down Naomi's cheeks. She felt she wasn't completely abandoned for the first time in weeks. A faint glimmer of hope lit inside her. In the following days, Naomi moved into the shelter Grace had recommended. It was an old but welcoming house, shared with other pregnant women or raising young children. Naomi learned to cook simple meals, attended prenatal checkups, and, most importantly, began to imagine a future with her baby. Each night, she sat by the window, writing letters in a journal for her child. "My dear, I can't promise you a life of wealth, but I promise you will grow up surrounded by love. I will work hard, study hard, so that one day you'll be proud that your mother never gave up." Those words became her strength. Naomi knew the road ahead would be grueling, but love had replaced despair in her heart. The child was a miracle, the reason to live. Naomi Johnson, the woman once dismissed, once cast aside, was now a resilient mother, ready to sacrifice everything to protect the small life within her. And from that day forward, she never vowed to let anyone belittle her dreams again. Toronto in 2002 was bitterly cold, its streets buried in white snow, buses crawling slowly through intersections under yellow streetlights reflected on the frozen ground. In a small second-floor room of a women's shelter, Naomi held her newborn daughter in her arms. She named her Maya, a name that carried the echo of dreams, of miracles she had never believed she would have. Maya slept soundly, her face flushed pink, tiny lips gently pursed. Looking at her, Naomi's heart tightened with an overwhelming love that nearly broke her. But joy was accompanied by fear. Each night, when the baby slept, Naomi sat silently by the window, her tired eyes gazing out at the quiet streets. She had nothing in her hands but determination. No money, no family, no man to lean on. Only Maya, and because of Maya, she could not afford to collapse. The next day, Naomi began attending a nursing program Grace had recommended. Classes were held in an old community center, with scratched wooden desks and flickering fluorescent lights. But for Naomi, it was the beginning of something new. She left Maya at the free daycare downstairs and stepped into the classroom, sitting among other women, many single mothers, some older, some younger. The instructor wrote medical terms on the board, her voice firm and clear. Naomi scribbled eagerly, each word sketching out the dream her ex-husband had once trampled. By day, she studied. By night, she worked as a waitress in a diner near Chinatown. Her uniform clung with sweat, her hands raw from washing dishes. Many shifts dragged past midnight. Naomi would rock Maya asleep in a stroller by the kitchen, washing dishes while softly humming lullabies. Once, the manager frowned. "You can't keep bringing your baby here. Customers are complaining." Naomi bowed her head, her voice quiet but firm. "I have no one else to watch her. I'll work faster. I won't let anyone complain again. The wages were meager, but enough to pay for their room, diapers, and formula. Naomi survived on peanut butter sandwiches for weeks to save money for Maya's milk. Every time she held her daughter, she whispered, "You'll never go without. I'll endure everything, as long as you grow up strong." Despite exhaustion, Naomi stood out in her nursing classes. She listened intently and aced every test. Her instructor, Mrs. Thompson, an older woman with sharp eyes, looked at her with admiration. "You have something special, Naomi. A sensitivity and patience patients need. I believe you'll become an exceptional nurse." Those words became Naomi's fuel. She often came home late and drained, but every ounce of fatigue melted away when she saw Maya smiling in her sleep. One sweltering summer night, the shelter's electricity was cut off because the bill wasn't paid on time. Naomi fanned Maya with a piece of paper as the child slept, sweat dripping from her brow. She whispered, "Maya, you deserve more than this. I promise I'll take you away from here someday." And that day came. After 2 years of relentless effort, Naomi graduated from the nursing program with top marks. At the modest ceremony, she wore a white blouse for the first time, holding 2-year-old Maya in her arms. Mrs. Thompson smiled warmly. "Naomi, this is just the beginning. Keep going further. Your daughter will be proud of you." Tears filled Naomi's eyes as she thanked her, whispering to Maya, "We did it, my girl." Naomi began working at Toronto General Hospital. Long night shifts, patients in pain, children crying for comfort. She learned to dress wounds, give injections, soothe the ill. Colleagues quickly noticed Naomi's gift. Patients trusted her, children clung to her, and the elderly looked at her like they were their daughter. One colleague murmured, "Johnson has golden hands. She doesn't just heal wounds, she heals hearts." But the work was demanding. She called Grace to watch Maya while she stayed at the hospital some nights. She sometimes administered medication while worrying about Maya's fever at home. Her heart was split in two, half for her patients, half for her daughter. Often she wondered, "Am I being greedy? Can I really be both a good nurse and a good mother?" But whenever Maya ran to hug her legs, shouting "Mama," Naomi knew the answer was yes. Maya grew up in her mother's arms, in a world pieced together from pennies and sacrifices. At 4, she asked, "Mama, why is our house so small? Why do my friends have dads to pick them up, but I don't?" Naomi swallowed her tears, hugging her tightly. "You have me, and you have dreams. Dreams will take you anywhere you want to go." Maya's eyes widened. "Where are dreams, Mama?" Naomi smiled. "In your heart and in love." Those simple answers became the foundation of Maya's soul. She was eager to learn, bright, often sitting with Naomi to look at medical books, pointing at a picture of a heart. "Mama, can I fix hearts when I grow up?" Naomi stroked her hair. "You can do anything, as long as you never give up." Though poor, Naomi gave Maya a world overflowing with love. Naomi couldn't afford significant birthday gifts, only a small cake with a single candle. Together they sang, and Maya's laughter lit up the room. Naomi thought, "No mansions, no fancy cars, this smile is enough." But Naomi also knew love wasn't enough. She needed to go further. In 2005, she enrolled in advanced training to become a registered nurse. More study meant longer shifts and less sleep, but Naomi accepted it. She stayed up nights reading, with dark circles under her eyes. When Maya asked, "Mama, why do you study so much?" Naomi answered, "Because knowledge is power. I want to be strong to help others, and to show you that learning can change the world." Maya absorbed every word. By 6, she was reading complex words. She could discuss basic biology by 8. Teachers called her a rare scientific mind. Naomi was proud, but she knew her sacrifices had laid the foundation. By the time Maya turned 10, Naomi was a registered nurse in pediatrics. The work was grueling but meaningful. She cared for children with heart and lung diseases, sometimes staying by their bedside for hours, singing them to sleep. Parents called her the angel in white. One evening, after a long shift, Naomi returned home late. Maya had finished her homework and left a note on the table, written in careful, childlike letters. "Mama, I want to be an angel in white like you. I'll heal hearts." Naomi held the paper, tears streaming down her face, but her heart swelling with hope. Life was still hard, still full of trials, but Naomi had turned ruin into strength. From a woman scorned and abandoned, she had rebuilt her life on love and resilience. Maya grew up in hardship and the bright light of dreams, and Naomi knew the road ahead would be long, but mother and daughter were ready. Toronto, autumn 2009, the maple leaves blazed red, coloring entire street corners. Naomi stood at the bottom of the elementary school steps, lunchbox in hand, waiting for her daughter. Maya was only 10, her hair tied into 2 braids, her eyes bright as stars. She ran down the stairs clutching a notebook filled with notes. "Mama, today we learned about the heart. I even drew the diagram of how blood flows. The teacher said I could be a scientist someday." Naomi bent down, hugging her tightly, kissing her sun-scented hair. "I believe you'll do even more than that, my love. You'll heal broken hearts, Maya." The child's eyes shone with innocent faith, but in Naomi's heart, those words weren't just encouragement, they were the dream she once carried, now passed on to her daughter. Through middle school, Maya became an outstanding student. She topped her science classes, spending hours in the library reading old medical books Naomi brought home from the hospital. Friends teased her for being like a little doctor, but Maya didn't care. Deep inside, a seed had long been planted, the dream of becoming a doctor, just as her mother once dreamed. Naomi was proud, but also worried. She feared Maya might suffer the same pain she once endured, being belittled, having her dream crushed. Yet every time she saw her daughter passionately talking about anatomy or new surgical methods she had read in medical journals, Naomi knew this path could not be stopped. It was etched into Maya's heart. Life was still hard for the two of them. Naomi worked full-time at Toronto General's pediatric ward, often coming home at dawn after night shifts. Maya studied alone, cooked simple meals, and walked to the library. But the absence never made her bitter. Instead, she grew stronger, determined to prove her mother's sacrifices were not in vain. At 14, Maya joined a summer program for young science enthusiasts. In a small university lab, she held a real heart for the first time, a pig's heart for research. Her hands trembled as she touched the chambers, the veins. That evening, she burst with excitement. "Mama, I saw a real heart today. It's more complex and beautiful than I ever imagined. I want to be the one who repairs it when it's broken." Naomi hugged her, tears streaming. "My daughter, you've chosen your own path, and I'll always be right behind you." Maya excelled more and more, winning city science competitions. Local newspapers wrote about the Toronto girl who dreams of healing hearts. Naomi read the articles, her chest swelling with pride but also a pang of sorrow. Had she not been forced to abandon her own dream, perhaps she would have been the one stepping into a medical school lecture hall. She quickly brushed the thought aside. Maya was her continuation proof that dreams never die. At 16, Maya was accepted into a special program that allowed high school students to take university courses. She devoured biology, anatomy, and medical chemistry. Professors were astonished by a teenager who could discuss complex heart surgeries. One of them told Naomi, "Your daughter isn't just brilliant. She has a rare passion. She'll go very far." Naomi's eyes blurred with tears. Maya grew more resilient like her mother as time passed. But she carried her father's sharpness, something Naomi never mentioned. Sometimes, when Naomi looked into her daughter's eyes, she saw the faint green glint that had once drawn her to Daniel. Each time, a stabbing ache returned, but she kept it buried, never allowing the past to taint her daughter's future. At 18, Maya graduated at the top of her high school class. When her name was called, the entire auditorium rose in applause. Naomi wept openly in the back row. She remembered peanut butter sandwiches to save money for formula, nights awake studying while working, and overdue electricity bills. All of it was worth this moment. Soon after, Maya received an acceptance letter from a prestigious medical school and a full scholarship, which is rare for someone so young. Mother and daughter clung to each other in tears that night in their small kitchen. "Mama, we did it," Maya whispered. "No, you did it," Naomi replied. "You've proven that dreams are never a luxury." Entering medical school, Maya quickly became a phenomenon. Though younger than most peers, she demonstrated remarkable skill. In labs, her hands were steady, her focus so sharp that professors marveled. Patients trusted her instantly in hospital rotations, comforted by her gentle voice and compassionate gaze. Colleagues began calling her the angel of cardiology. Naomi followed every step with pride and fear. She worried Maya might be swallowed by the same ambition that had once consumed Daniel, ambition that devoured love. But Maya was different. She wasn't driven by fame or money. She worked for the patients gasping for breath, for the children with faltering hearts. One night, after a long rotation, Maya sat beside her mother's bed. "Mama, I want to be a heart surgeon. I want to repair imperfect hearts the way you repaired mine all these years with love." Naomi broke into tears, hugging her tightly. "Maya, you are my miracle, and I know you'll save thousands of lives." The years that followed were grueling, endless exams, demanding practicums. Maya's name began appearing in the press as a rare young talent. Medical conferences invited her to present. She developed a new surgical technique on animal models, offering hope to patients once deemed beyond saving. Toronto admired Maya Johnson, the girl raised by a single mother in poverty, now a rising star in medicine. But only Naomi knew the truth behind the spotlight. The sleepless nights, the tears, the whispered promises between mother and daughter. And then fate intervened. Maya was about to face the most difficult surgery of her life on a man she had never known, yet whose blood ran in her veins. The father she had never met. Toronto. Autumn 2024, brilliant in the morning Sunday. The colossal glass structure called Moreau Tower rose above the financial district, a monument to power and success. In a boardroom on the 42nd floor, Daniel Moreau sat at the head of a gleaming mahogany table, his presence like that of a modern king. At 49, he was still tall and imposing, his salt and pepper hair neatly styled, his tailored suit flawless. A Swiss watch gleamed on his wrist under the lights. Yet, if one looked closely, his green eyes had lost the warmth of youth, leaving only shards of ice. Across from him sat Victor Chen, once a friend, now a rival. Victor's frame had thickened at 50, but his sharp, calculating eyes remained. He leaned back in his chair, his voice steady but edged with challenge. "Daniel, you should think carefully. My offer is generous, $12 billion for the entire corporation. The parent company, subsidiaries, defense contracts, and patents. You sell, then retire. You could spend the rest of your life on any island." Daniel gave a bitter laugh, devoid of humor. "Victor, do you take me for a fool? The cybersecurity division alone is worth double your offer. You want to swallow my empire for scraps?" Victor tilted his head, voice lowering. "Daniel, you're lying to yourself. The Federal Trade Commission already has files on the commissions you paid officials. Once they go public, the company will collapse, and you may face prison. My offer isn't cheap, it's your lifeline." The air grew suffocating. Directors along the table hardly dared breathe. Daniel rose slowly, walking to the massive glass window, staring at the glittering city. Toronto had once adored him, calling him the tech genius, Canada's pride. Now, the halo was cracking. He turned back, his voice low but sharp. "Get out of my tower, Victor. If you think a few papers and cheap threats can scare me, you're wrong. I'll crush you both in business and personally." Victor stood, answering bluntly, "I warned you, Daniel. Arrogance is your greatest weakness, and you will pay dearly." When the door shut behind Victor, Daniel felt a stabbing pain in his chest. He braced himself against the table, taking a deep breath. No one noticed he hid it too well, but inside, his heart was crying for help. That evening, Daniel returned to his penthouse atop Moreau Tower. Everything was flawless. Italian furniture was polished to shine, art lined the walls, and fine wines were displayed in glass cases. Yet the space was cold, devoid of laughter. On the sofa sat Elise Beaumont, his new fiancée. At 35, she was terrific, but cold as marble. Her blonde hair was tied high, her smoky grey eyes forever calculating. Once a prominent lawyer, Elise was with Daniel not for love, but for power and position. "You look tired," she said, her voice indifferent. "Victor troubling you again?" Daniel loosened his tie, sinking into a chair opposite. "He thinks I'd sell my empire for 12 billion. I'd rather die." Elise swirled her wine, her eyes cold. "Daniel, perhaps you should be more realistic. The authorities are closing in. If you don't find a way out, everything will collapse, and I'm not sure I want to be dragged down with you." Her words chilled him. He studied her, then laughed bitterly. "So you're like the rest, here for money, for status. When the storm comes, you'll run." Elise didn't deny it. She shrugged, as if negotiating a contract. "You know what I want. Stability, a future, a family. If you can't provide it, I'll look elsewhere." Daniel turned away, pouring himself a strong drink. For a fleeting moment, he thought of Naomi, the woman who once dreamed of being a doctor. He remembered her eyes when she spoke of saving lives, remembered the promise he made under Toronto's night sky, the promise he had betrayed. Another sharp pain seared his chest, stronger this time. His glass nearly slipped. Elise frowned but didn't move. "You should see a doctor." "You're not young anymore, Daniel. I'm still strong enough to run an empire," he muttered, masking the tremor in his voice. But in the mirror, he saw grey skin, hollow eyes, a heavy gait. Success had cost him everything, leaving a broken body and a lonely soul. A week later, during a shareholders' meeting, Daniel unveiled his international expansion plan. He spoke confidently, but his throat was dry, sweat running down his spine. Mid-speech, his vision blurred. Applause faded, lights fractured into halos. "Mr. Moreau," a director called. But before anyone could react, Daniel staggered and collapsed on the stage. Panic erupted. Shouts filled the hall. Someone called an ambulance. Daniel felt himself sink into darkness, haunted by one last memory. That autumn night, kneeling under Toronto's lights, vowing never to betray love. Then, everything went black. Sirens pierced Bay Street's rush-hour noise. Inside the ambulance, Daniel lay pale, struggling to breathe. A paramedic pressed on his chest, shouting, "Right ventricular failure. We need Toronto General, fast." Outside, shaken shareholders made frantic calls, some to the press, others sighing with relief, as if his downfall had long been expected. The city buzzed with the news. Daniel Moreau, Toronto's most powerful man, had collapsed at the heart of his empire. In the emergency room, harsh white lights illuminated his aging face. Doctors strapped monitors to his chest, erratic numbers flashed. His heart raced and faltered like a clock about to stop. "Severe condition," one doctor muttered it. "Without an extraordinary approach, he won't survive." Daniel's eyes fluttered open faintly. The ceiling swayed above him, voices echoing from far away. He felt himself drifting between two shores of light and dark. Memories surged: Naomi's young face, gentle smile, and promise he broke. Then Victor's mocking grin, Elise's cold eyes over her wine glass. A lifetime of triumph suddenly seemed hollow. "Mr. Moreau," a female voice called. Elise entered, heels clicking sharply on the floor, impeccably dressed, flawless as ever. But her eyes held no panic, no grief, only unease, tinged with annoyance. "Doctor," she asked calmly, "will he survive?" The physician frowned. "We can't say yet. His heart condition is complex. We'll need to consult top specialists." Elise nodded, stepping back, but her mind was on calculations. If Daniel died, what of his assets? How would Morotech's stock react? What of her reputation? When her phone rang, she excused herself, leaving the room as if it were a business deal. In a brief, lucid moment, Daniel turned his eyes, searching for someone, anyone. But there was no one. No friends, no family, no hand to hold. He thought of Naomi. Did she know he lay here? He thought of the child they once dreamed of. Did such a child exist? His heart clenched with the realization. Perhaps he had never known if he had a son or daughter. He had walked away too soon, too coldly. The monitor shrieked a flatline. Doctors rushed in. A breathing tube was forced in, and electric paddles jolted his body. Daniel felt himself on the edge of a void, staring into endless black. He was terrified not of death itself, but of dying alone, after a lifetime without true love. In the hallway, Elise whispered into her phone, "If his condition worsens, we'll prepare legal measures. I won't let myself be dragged down." Her voice was crisp, like a contract being signed. Doctors deliberated. The cardiac damage is severe, the location critical. Most surgeries would fail. Another added, "Perhaps only the new generation of specialists developing novel methods could attempt this." Daniel slipped into a coma, but in his mind, Naomi's voice echoed, "You've forgotten every promise. You betrayed me." He wanted to scream, "I'm sorry, Naomi. I was wrong." But no sound escaped. Only the sterile beeping of machines answered. That night, Toronto General Hospital became a battlefield against time. Outside, the city pulsed with light and motion, oblivious. In a sealed-off room, Daniel Moreau, the man who once ruled Toronto's skyline, fought between life and death, utterly alone. And none of the doctors yet knew that the only person capable of saving his failing heart was the daughter he had never known. Midnight at Toronto General Hospital, the hallways glared with fluorescent light, hurried footsteps echoing across the white-tiled floor. A circle of seasoned cardiologists in the conference room stood around a screen displaying Daniel Moreau's angiogram. His heart appeared in stark detail, a torn arterial wall, surrounding tissue badly degenerated. "We can't operate conventionally," the head of cardiology said, weary. "The damage is in an inaccessible spot. If we touch it, the patient dies on the table." "Heart transplant?" another suggested. "Not viable. He doesn't have the time to wait." Silence descended. Outside, the press had already swarmed, headlines racing across news sites. Tech tycoon Daniel Moreau, critical at Toronto General. Shareholders panicked, and stocks plunged. But inside this room, only one question mattered: how to save a life dangling on the edge. The door swung open. A calm but firm female voice rang out, "There's still one way." All eyes turned. In the doorway stood a young surgeon in scrubs, streaked with blood from a previous emergency. Her green eyes burned under the lights, steady enough to silence the room. "Dr. Johnson," the chief exclaimed, "you just finished your shift. Why are you here?" "Because this patient needs a different solution," Maya replied, stepping forward and pointing a laser at the heart image. "If we stick to textbooks, he'll be dead in hours. But if we think differently, there's a chance." An older doctor frowned. "A chance? This is the most complex case we've ever seen. You're 23. Do you really think you can do what surgeons with 30 years' experience can't?" Maya didn't flinch. "I've studied an arterial reconstruction using the Y-graft hybrid technique. My team tested it on large animals with promising results. It's never been done on a human. But this is the moment to risk it. Otherwise, the patient dies." The room grew heavier. Some shook their heads, but the chief held his gaze on her. What he saw wasn't reckless youth, but the eyes of someone who truly believed in science, in life. "Are you sure you can withstand the pressure, Johnson?" he asked quietly. "If you fail, your career ends, and the patient dies in your hands." Maya drew a breath, her voice unwavering. "I'm not here to protect a career. I'm here to save a life, and I know I can." The chief nodded slowly. "Very well, we'll try. But I'll stand beside you, ready to intervene if it collapses." Maya inclined her head. Inside her, a strange feeling stirred. Looking at the heart image, she sensed an uncanny connection, as though an invisible thread bound them. She shook it off. Now was no time for sentiment. Now was the time to save a life. In the operating room, harsh lights blazed over the table. Daniel lay motionless, his gaunt chest rising only with machine support. Nurses readied instruments, and the heart-lung bypass machine hummed steadily. The air was taut as a wire. "Begin," Maya said, her voice steadier than she expected. The scalpel traced the first incision, skin, muscle, layer by layer. Every move was precise, her hands unshaken. In her mind, the steps were already mapped 100 times over each vessel, and angle is already familiar. When the chest opened, the heart appeared weak, misshapen, barely beating. "My God," a surgeon whispered. "Worse than we thought." Maya's gaze didn't waver. "Engage bypass." The machine took over. Daniel's heart stopped. His life now lay entirely in her hands. "Expose the aorta," she ordered. Clamps, sutures, graft tubing, each command delivered quickly, firmly, becoming the room's rhythm. The older surgeons who had doubted her now followed in silence, recognizing her astonishing precision. 3 hours in, the most challenging part began, reconstructing the artery. She removed the rotted section, replaced it with a synthetic graft, and stitched it into healthy tissue to form a Y branch for blood flow. Each stitch wagered both her career and the man's life. A sudden burst of bleeding flooded the field. "Pressure dropping," a nurse cried. Maya stayed calm. "Clamp now. More blood units. Good. Continue suturing." Her voice cut sharp as steel, her hands swift, steady. Minutes later, bleeding slowed, and vitals stabilized. The staff exchanged glances, their skepticism replaced with awe. The operation pressed on. For Maya, the room fell away. There was only her and the failing heart. Each suture felt like a dialogue. "Don't give up. Let me help you." Time blurred. The 5th hour passed, sweat dripping beneath her mask, but her hands never faltered. The assisting doctors, once doubtful, now couldn't look away. What they witnessed was more than skill brilliance fused with unshakable belief. "Prepare the graft connection," Maya said, her voice hoarse with fatigue but firm. The synthetic Y-graft was positioned. She began the decisive stitching. One error would mean catastrophic bleeding. 10 minutes left on bypass safety, a nurse whispered. Maya's green eyes lit with determination. "We'll finish in time." At minute 7, vitals wavered, blood pressure dropped, vessels trembled. The chief stepped forward. "Let me." "No." Maya's voice rang out. "I've got it." Her hands moved in a blur. An auxiliary stitch. A clamp adjusted. The monitor steadied. The chief froze, then stepped back. In his eyes, respect flickered. He had just witnessed genius. By the 8th hour, exhaustion gripped the team, but none complained. They were drawn into Maya's orbit, driven by her fierce calm. "Graft complete," she murmured. "Prepare to restart the heart." The bypass still pumped. Clamps released. Blood flowed into the new Y branch. All eyes locked on the monitor. 1 second, 2, 3. The heart lay still. "It's not restarting," someone whispered. Maya didn't panic. She placed 2 fingers on the muscle, gently massaging, her voice rasping but resolute. "Come on, don't stop now." Beep. A faint rhythm. Beep. Beep. Stronger. The monitor lit with stable numbers. Relief swept the room, quiet gasps, then cheers. A nurse wept silently, wiping her eyes. Maya stepped back, eyes shining. The heart is beating. Circulation restored. The chief stared at her, voice thick. "This isn't just surgery. This is a revolution." After 9 grueling hours, the final suture closed. Maya stripped off her gloves, her body trembling with exhaustion. She stepped into the hallway, pulled off her mask, and drew a ragged breath. Alone on a wooden bench, she buried her face in her hands. Tears came not from fear or pain, but from the overwhelming joy of the impossible made real. The door opened. The chief emerged, eyes wet with emotion. "Johnson, you've just rewritten medical history." Maya wiped her tears, managing a smile. "No, I just did what a doctor must do. Save a life." Inside recovery, Daniel Moreau lay still, gaunt but breathing steadily. The heart in his chest beat rhythmically thanks to the hands of a young surgeon who didn't yet know his name. Outside, the press exploded. "Miracle surgery saves billionaire Daniel Moreau." But Maya cared nothing for fame. In her heart, she felt only the strange, invisible bond between her and that fragile heart, as though it wasn't just a stranger's, but one tied by blood. She didn't yet know that truth would surface and change everything. Daniel awoke slowly, as though surfacing from deep water. His head felt heavy as lead, his body aching everywhere. The first sound he registered was the steady beeping of a heart monitor, reminding him that his heart, which had nearly burst, was beating again. He opened his eyes. The harsh white light of the recovery room stabbed at them. Blurred shapes sharpened into focus. A white ceiling, 4 lines, a ventilator, the flicker of monitors. Beside the bed sat a young figure in pale blue scrubs, jotting notes. "You're awake." The voice was soft, yet steady. Daniel turned his head. Before him was a youthful face, eyes glowing green beneath the lights. The sight made his heart seize, not just because they were terrific, but because they were painfully familiar. "Who are you?" he rasped, voice hoarse. The young doctor gave a small, professional smile, as if accustomed to such questions from patients. "I'm Dr. Maya Johnson. I performed your heart surgery." The name stunned him. "Johnson?" he whispered, barely breathing. "Yes," she nodded. "You underwent a 9-hour operation. Everything is stable now, but recovery will take time." Daniel stared harder. The eyes, the contours of her face, even her posture, it all recalled someone. Someone he had buried in memory for over 20 years. Naomi. Blood surged to his temples. His heart thudded beneath its stitches. The monitor shrieked in alarm. Maya quickly touched his shoulder, her touch gentle but firm. "You need to stay calm. Too much emotion will strain the repair." Her hand was small but warm, a warmth achingly familiar, like one he had once known. Long ago. Daniel wanted to ask, to cry out, "Are you my daughter?" But his throat was dry, and fear gripped him, fear of the answer. Maya lingered a moment, her gaze oddly searching too. She was used to patients' eyes, but never had anyone looked at her with such shock and sorrow entwined. "You should rest," she said at last, stepping back. "Tomorrow we'll run further tests. You're alive because of a new heart, your own heart, but reborn." Daniel closed his eyes, but sleep refused him. Memories churned. Naomi's tear-streaked face the morning she left with a small suitcase, the med school acceptance letter he had once tossed aside, the cruel words a childish dream, and now, a young woman named Johnson, with his eyes, who had just saved him. Could it be? The thought shook him to the core. The hospital night was silent, save for the wind rattling against the glass and the cold glow of the corridor lights. Daniel lay restless, haunted by memory. Naomi's empty gaze at the divorce papers, her silhouette vanishing into the hallway, and now, the green eyes of a girl so like his own. The door opened softly. Daniel expected a nurse, but his heart jolted when the light spilled in. Naomi. She wore the hospital's nurse uniform, her frame slight but resolute. Her hair was streaked with grey, her face lined with years of toil, yet her dark eyes, oh God, were the same ones that once looked at him with unguarded love. She froze. His name left her lips, broken. "Daniel." His chest tightened, his own voice cracked, but the word came, "Naomi." The air froze between them. Once, under Toronto's sky, they had pledged forever. After over 20 years, they faced each other again. He was in a hospital bed, and she was in a white coat. Naomi drew a steadying breath. "I never imagined. The man Maya saved would be you." Daniel flinched. "Maya, she's our daughter?" Naomi shut her eyes, tears slipping free. After years of silence, the truth could no longer be hidden. She nodded. "Yes, Maya is our daughter." The world tilted. His patched heart trembled in his chest. "My God, 23 years, and I never knew." Naomi's voice shook, yet remained sharp. "Because you didn't deserve to know. That day, you crushed my dream, treated me with contempt, and cast me into the street with nothing. I couldn't let my daughter grow up with a father who disdained life itself. I raised her alone. And do you know what? She grew strong and compassionate. She became a doctor, the very thing you once dismissed as childish." Each word struck like a knife. Daniel tried to speak, but his lips trembled. All his wealth, empire, and triumphs were shattered before the truth. He had missed his daughter's childhood. The door opened again. Maya entered, medical file in hand. She froze at the sight of both faces turned toward her, her mother's tearful eyes, Daniel's stunned expression. "Mom? What's going on?" Naomi turned, inhaled deeply, then spoke with effort. "Maya, this is Daniel Moreau, your patient and your father." The words detonated inside Maya's mind. She staggered back, eyes wide. "My father, him?" Daniel struggled upright, his voice ragged. "Maya, yes. I never knew. I swear I never knew. Tears blurred her vision. Memories flooded. Nights her mother worked to exhaustion, bread and peanut butter dinners. Birthdays with a tiny cake but overflowing love. The silence whenever she asked about her father. And now the truth. The man who had abandoned her mother, leaving them in poverty, was the man she had just saved. Mom, why didn't you tell me? All these years, I thought he was dead or gone forever. Naomi broke down, clutching her. I wanted you free of his shadow. I feared he'd hurt you as he had hurt me. I only wanted you to grow with your dream unchained. Maya's throat burned as she turned to Daniel. You. What did you do to my mother? Daniel's strength collapsed. His voice broke. I was blind. I chose money over love. I called her dream childish. And I paid the price 23 years of loneliness. I don't deserve to be your father. But you saved me. You gave me a second chance. The room was silent, but for stifled sobs. Maya stood between them, her mother, who raised her with everything, and the man she had just learned was her father. At last, she whispered, trembling, I don't know if I can forgive you. But I know this. I saved a patient. If you truly want to be my father, you'll have to prove it not with money but love. Daniel wept for the first time in decades. He reached out a trembling hand. Maya hesitated, then laid hers upon it. In that moment, 3 lives once torn apart by ambition, pain, and silence finally touched after over 20 years. And Daniel's once shattered heart beat steadily again, not just because a surgeon had mended it, but because he had found the family he thought lost forever. The light in the cardiac recovery ward at Toronto General Hospital was softer than usual, as if even the fluorescent lamps understood the patient's fragile state. The monitor beeped steadily, Daniel Moreau's heartbeat tracing across the screen like a fragile wave that had just regained stability after a storm. He awoke in a haze, his senses dulled, his body feeling like a torn fabric stitched back together. The first sensation he recognized was life, fragile, but undeniable. Unlike that moment in the boardroom on the 42nd floor, when he had believed his end would come in cold solitude watched only by lawyers and rivals. Now, his heart beat again, his breath returned, and beside his bed, a calm voice greeted him. Good morning, Mr. Moreau. I'm Dr. Sophia Thompson. I performed your surgery. All your vitals are stable. Daniel turned his head slowly, his eyes heavy, and he saw her a strikingly young face framed by a white coat, her hair tied neatly back. Her eyes shone with determination, yet radiated a warmth he could scarcely name. Those eyes, he froze. It was like a mirror from his memory had been set before him, that shade of green flecked with amber his own eyes. But in hers, there was no coldness, only kindness, conviction, and a love he did not dare call by name. You saved me, Daniel rasped, his throat raw. Yes, sir? Sophia nodded, her tired smile radiant. It was the most complex operation I've ever performed, but you fought hard. You're safe now. Daniel nodded faintly, but his mind was spiraling. A question formed, absurd yet haunting. Why did she look so much like him? You're very young, he murmured, trying to steady himself. How old are you? 23, Sophia answered easily. I know my age surprises patients, but I accelerated my training and joined research early. Daniel gave a weak, ironic laugh, admiration mingled with unease. 23. The very age his Maya had once dreamed of entering medicine. His heart monitor blipped faster, drawing Sophia's concern. Are you short of breath? I'll adjust your morphine, she offered, leaning closer. He shook his head, catching his breath. No, I heard your name. Thompson, was it? Sophia blinked, surprised, then nodded. Yes, Sophia Thompson, my mother's name. Daniel's chest clenched. Thompson. The name echoed like a bell from the past. He forced calm into his face. A coincidence. I once knew someone with that name. You might know my mother, Sophia said with quiet pride. Maya Thompson. She's been a nurse here in pediatrics for over 15 years. The world stopped. Daniel's blood seemed to freeze. His breath quickened, alarms shrilled. Sophia rushed to adjust his IV. Steady, breathe. If your blood pressure spikes, the stitches could rupture. But he heard nothing. Only one name thundered in his mind. Maya. Maya, the woman he once knelt before under Toronto's lights, vowing to support her dream of becoming a doctor. Maya, the woman who walked away in tears when he chose money over love. And now, Maya was the mother of this young woman, of Sophia. Sophia was their daughter. He trembled, reaching for her hand. Your mother, Maya. She is your mother? Sophia paused, then nodded. Yes, my mother is Maya Thompson. Daniel felt his head explode with its weight. He wanted to ask 1,000 questions. Why had Maya never told him? How had he never known he had a daughter? What had Sophia endured in 23 years without him? The door swung open before he could speak. A group of doctors entered, led by Dr. Jonathan Weiss, the supervising surgeon. And behind them, Daniel's breath caught, came a woman he never thought he would see again. Maya. Time seemed to collapse. Maya's short hair streaked with grey, her face lined by hardship, yet still radiating strength. She froze at seeing him, the file slipping from her hands, papers scattering. For Daniel, the decades vanished. Before him wasn't just a weary nurse, but the woman he once held beneath the city lights, the woman he had promised forever. His voice cracked as he whispered, Maya. Silence engulfed the room, broken only by the monitor's steady beeps. Sophia stared between them, bewildered. Mom. You know him? Maya's lips trembled, but at last she spoke. Yes, Sophia, this is Daniel Moreau, the man who was once my husband. Sophia's eyes widened, her heart pounding as the fragments fell into place. Her age, shared eyes, her mother's secrecy, and the undeniable truth. So, she stammered, that means... Maya turned to her, tears brimming. Yes, Sophia, he is your father. The room erupted in silence, heavy and suffocating. Daniel wept tears he had buried for decades. He stretched out a frail hand toward Sophia, though his body barely moved. Sophia, his voice cracked. I never knew. You existed. Sophia stepped back, her chest tight. A storm of emotions tore through her. The patient she had saved, the infamous billionaire on the news, and now her father. Maya's breath came hard, rage flickering in her eyes. You didn't know because you never cared to. I carried our child alone, gave birth alone, raised her alone while you sat on your throne of wealth. Daniel bowed his head, voice trembling. Maya, I'm sorry. I never imagined. Don't. Maya's voice was sharp. Don't apologize to me. Please think of the years our daughter suffered. We lived in cramped rooms. I worked 3 jobs to buy formula, while you had mansions, cars, and millions in the bank. Sophia's heart ached as she absorbed her mother's words. She had never known her past was this bitter. Now, the truth overwhelmed her. Daniel tried to speak, but his voice broke. He could only look at Sophia's eyes, his eyes mirrored back, filled with pain and confusion. The room pulsed with 3 broken hearts. A father drowning in regret, a mother burning with fury, and a daughter trapped between worlds she had never known. Mama, Sophia whispered, trembling. Why did you never tell me? Naomi Maya looked at her, pain mingled with resolve. Because I wanted to protect you, Sophia, from a man who chose wealth over love, who called my dream childish. I couldn't let you grow under his shadow. Sophia staggered back, reeling. As a child, she had asked about her father, but her mother always said he couldn't be there. She had imagined so many scenarios, death, distance, abandonment, but never this, that her father was Daniel Moreau, the ruthless king of tech. I deserve to know, Sophia cried, her voice breaking. I lived 23 years not knowing I had a father alive. I deserved the truth. Maya closed her eyes, tears spilling. I know, and I've carried that guilt every day. But understand, Sophia, I wanted you free to dream and become yourself, not trapped under his shadow. Daniel's chest heaved, his voice rasped. Sophia, believe me, I swear, I never knew. If I had, I'd never have abandoned. Maya cut him off with a bitter laugh. Never abandoned? Daniel, you abandoned me while I was still beside you. You chose your empire over your promise. Would you have been different if you'd known I was pregnant? Or would you have seen our child as another distraction from your millions? Her words cut like blades. Daniel trembled, knowing she was right. Memories lashed him, dismissing her call on Christmas Eve, mocking her dream as childish. He had no defense. Sophia clutched her head, sobbing. I just saved a man's life. And now I learn he's my father. Her cry shattered Daniel. He reached for her, but Maya stepped between. Don't touch her. You have no right. Daniel's eyes begged. Please, at least let me explain. Explain what? Maya snapped. Do you regret it? That you were wrong? Regret doesn't erase 23 years of struggle. It doesn't replace the nights I sat with a feverish child and no money for medicine. It doesn't change the silence when Sophia asked for her father, and I had no answer. Sophia sobbed harder, whispering, But Mama, now I know the truth. And the truth is, he is still my father. Maya froze, her daughter's words breaking through her fury. She clenched her hands, fighting the tremor in her chest. Blood alone doesn't make a father, Sophia. A birth father is present. He nurtures, he lifts. Daniel only learned of you today. Daniel bowed his head. She was right. He didn't deserve the title, but his heart yearned for a chance. Sophia, he whispered, tears streaming. I won't ask for forgiveness now, only for a chance to be near you, to give something back. I missed everything: your birth, your first steps, your graduations. But if you allow it, I don't want to miss your future. Sophia met his gaze, her own reflected in his. Guilt and hope swirled inside her. Logic screamed he wasn't worthy, but her heart whispered he was still her father. I need time, she said at last, her voice hoarse. I can't accept this overnight. Daniel nodded, tears falling freely. I understand. I'll wait, as long as it takes. Maya stood rigid, torn between rage and sorrow. She saw her daughter's anguish, which made her hate Daniel more. Yet when she looked at him, frail, broken, no longer a king but a penitent man, something in her shifted. The monitor beeped steadily, the rhythm of a heart relearning how to live. Sophia wiped her tears, turning away. Maya bent to gather the scattered papers, her voice low but firm. I won't stop my daughter from deciding. But remember this, Daniel. Love cannot be bought with wealth or fame. If you truly mean to atone, prove it with actions. Daniel nodded, voice breaking. I will, with all I have left. Sophia looked back at them, her parents, two people divided by years of hurt. Within her, pain and hope tangled. She didn't know the future, but she knew this. The secret was out, and none would be the same. The recovery room fell silent once more, but it was no longer the sterile quiet of machines. It was the silence of a family shattered, trying to piece together fragments, wondering if forgiveness was possible. And within that silence, faint but discernible, flickered a fragile light, the light of a second chance. 3 months after the miraculous surgery, Toronto was easing into winter. Festival lights sparkled across Yonge Street, reflected in the glass towers. The frigid air turned every breath into white smoke, yet a warmer season was beginning in some hearts, the season of second chances. Sophia sat by the window in a modest apartment near the Ontario lakeshore, her eyes weary after an 18-hour shift. Her phone buzzed non-stop messages from friends, colleagues, and especially from Daniel, the father she had only recently known. Sophia, I volunteered at the community clinic today. An older woman cried because someone finally took the time to read her whole medical file. I think you'd be proud. I joined a group teaching computer skills to immigrant teens. I realize now, not everything is measured in profit. Could you spare 5 minutes for a call? Just telling me you're all right would mean the world. Sophia read the messages repeatedly, a tide of emotions rising within her. She could not easily call him father, yet she could not deny he was genuinely trying. He no longer hid in skyscraper boardrooms or appeared in headlines about billion-dollar deals. Instead, he sat beside poor patients, listening to their breath, their stories. The door opened. Maya stepped in, bundled in a thick sweater, her face drawn after another night shift at Toronto General. She set her bag down, eyeing her daughter. You're rereading his messages? Sophia nodded. He's changed so much, Mama. At least, I think he's really trying. Maya was silent, then sat across from her, her expression torn. People can change, Sophia. But my heart may be too scarred to believe again. Sophia clasped her mother's hand, eyes steady. You taught me not to imprison people forever in their past. If you forgive patients their mistakes, if you believe troubled kids deserve second chances, why not believe that someone who hurt you might learn to love? Maya was stunned. The daughter she had raised with sweat and tears was now teaching her a lesson in forgiveness. Part of her wanted to reject it, yet another felt a door crack open. Meanwhile, Daniel Moreau no longer lived in a glittering penthouse. After the financial collapse and legal probes, he had sold most assets to pay debts and restitution. The press dubbed him the fallen tycoon, but at Street James Community Clinic, people called him Mr. Daniel. That afternoon, he patiently helped a Somali teenager write a job application online. As the boy thanked him profusely, Daniel felt a pride deeper than any business triumph, pride in helping a small life forward. Naomi Okafor, a senior nurse and woman who had once sheltered Maya in her darkest days, approached. Her hair was now streaked with silver, but her eyes still glowed warmly. Mr. Moreau, I hear Sophia's coming tomorrow to help at the clinic. Daniel's heart skipped. Truly? Are you sure? Naomi smiled. She asked me about our work here. I think she wants to see whether your change is real. Daniel nodded firmly. He had waited for this chance for 3 months, not to speak it, but to prove it. The next day, Sophia entered Street James. The clinic was humble but warmer than any modern hospital. Children's drawings decorated the walls. Old books filled a corner shelf, and chairs were mismatched but inviting. At the reception desk, Daniel was carefully translating a prescription for an elderly Chinese woman who spoke no English. When he saw Sophia, his hands trembled. But instead of rushing over, he stood and bowed his head. Thank you for coming. She looked around, saw the waiting patients, the gratitude in their eyes, and inhaled deeply. I have cardiology consults today. You can help enter patient records. Daniel smiled, eyes moist, and nodded. They worked side by side all day. Sophia focused on patients. Daniel translated, filed, and arranged. No one spoke of the past, yet every glance, every brief smile, every seamless collaboration was a thread stitching their bond anew. At day's end, Sophia sank into a chair, exhausted. Daniel handed her a water bottle. You work so hard. I have never seen anyone pour themselves into patients like you do. Sophia accepted it, her gaze steady. Because I learned from Mama. She always put patients first. Daniel bowed his head. I know. I lost an extraordinary woman. A silence stretched. Sophia twisted the bottle in her hands. Have you truly changed, or is this just guilt? Daniel lifted his eyes, brimming. At first, yes, guilt drove me, but then I realized. For the first time, I feel peace. Listening to people no one else listens to, helping without a profit margin. I don't want the old life back. I want to live the rest of my days like this. Sophia studied him, then slowly nodded. She wasn't ready to forgive, but she believed him. That evening, Maya received a call from Naomi. Maya, you should come to Street James. See it with your own eyes. Hesitant, Maya went. For years, she had built walls to protect herself, yet her daughter's hopeful eyes left her unable to refuse earlier that day. When she entered, Daniel was wiping tables. He looked up, startled, then set the cloth aside. Maya, she folded her arms. I didn't come for you. I came to see the truth. Daniel nodded, voice low. I understand. Look around. I have nothing to boast of, except this work. But here, I've learned what true value means. Maya glanced about the health posters, the neatly stacked free medicine, the lingering warmth of patient smiles. He was no longer the ruthless tycoon. He was simply a man, bowing to serve. Something stirred in her heart. Could people change? Could the man who once broke her rebuild himself in love? She turned away, hiding her tears. If you've really changed, keep doing this. Not for me, not even for Sophia. Do it for yourself. Daniel smiled softly. That's what I'm doing. But Maya, If someday you're ready, I want to prove that the old promise wasn't dead." Maya stayed silent. That promise, the one to help her become a doctor, had long been buried. Yet in her heart, its ember still glowed. The following spring, cherry blossoms blanketed High Park. Maya walked out of the lecture hall at the University of Toronto's Faculty of Medicine, holding her certificate from a special program that allowed veteran nurses to transition into full physicians. At 46, she was now officially Dr. Maya Thompson. The dream buried for over 20 years had risen again. Applause thundered. In the audience, Sophia shone with tears of pride. Beside her, Daniel stood, clapping furiously, tears streaking down his cheeks. He didn't care who watched. This was his greatest redemption. The woman he once mocked for her childish dream was now a doctor, and he was there to witness it. Outside the hall, Maya donned her first white coat. Sophia flung her arms around her. "You did it, Mama. You proved it's never too late to make dreams real." Maya laughed through tears. "If not for you, I'd have given up. You're the living proof that dreams are worth fighting for." Daniel approached slowly, like a guest. He drew a small box from his pocket, not a diamond ring, but a simple silver band, engraved, "To heal is to love." He knelt, voice trembling. "Maya, I know I'm unworthy. I lost you once, and it took me over 20 years to learn that love isn't possession, it's companionship. Today, I don't promise mansions or bank accounts. I promise only this: for the rest of my life, I will walk beside you, supporting every dream of yours, Sophia's, this family's. Will you give me a second chance?" Gasps rose from the crowd, phones lifted to record, but Maya heard nothing but her own heartbeat. She saw the ambitious young man he once was overlaid with the graying, tearful man kneeling now. Sophia held her breath. She knew her mother's wounds ran deep, but also that forgiveness was freedom. Maya looked at Daniel for a long moment. Tears fell, not of rage this time, but release. "Stand up, Daniel," she whispered. "I don't need you on your knees. I need to know you've truly changed. And if you have, then my answer is yes." Applause erupted. Daniel embraced her, trembling like a child who had found home again. Sophia wept, wrapping her arms around them both. Three souls once broken, now beating together as one. Months later, at the Street James Community Clinic, a new sign was unveiled: the Thompson-Moreau Family Clinic, healing with love. Maya, now a physician, led pediatrics. Sophia, the youngest cardiothoracic surgeon in the hospital, returned on weekends to perform free surgeries. No longer a billionaire, Daniel coordinated, fundraised, and greeted every patient with a genuine smile. At the opening, a young boy hugged Sophia. "Thank you for saving my brother's heart. My family will always be grateful." Sophia hugged him, glancing at her parents, who smiled brightly. Her heart whispered, "This is the true inheritance, not wealth, but healed hearts." The three sat by Lake Ontario that evening, city lights shimmering on the water. Daniel held Maya's hand, his voice calm. "I once thought the peak of life was owning a billion-dollar company. Now, my peak is this, sitting here with you and our daughter." Maya leaned on his shoulder. "And I once thought forgiveness was impossible. But Sophia showed me love is stronger than hate." Sophia smiled at them, eyes glistening. "You've both taught me that dreams are never out of reach, and that family can be reborn from ruin. I'm proud to be your daughter." The night breeze carried the lake's briny scent, whispering like time itself. The past may wound, but the future is always open. Years later, when the press retold Daniel Moreau's story from fallen tycoon to co-founder of a beloved clinic, they called it a redemption forged in love. But Daniel cared little for titles. What mattered was that he had finally kept the most precious thing: his family. Maya inspired countless women to chase their dreams. Sophia became one of the world's leading heart surgeons, yet always returned to the little clinic where medicine meant compassion. And, once consumed by ambition, Daniel found everything in love and forgiveness. One afternoon, outside the clinic, a young patient asked Sophia, "Doctor, can a broken heart really heal?" Sophia smiled, taking the child's hand. "Yes, not just with a scalpel, but with love. Any heart can heal if it is loved enough." At that moment, Maya stepped out of the clinic, Daniel following with a carton of milk for the children. The three exchanged a glance filled with simple joy. Above them, the Toronto sunset flamed across the sky, bearing witness to a truth eternal. Real love can overcome anything: time, pain, and even the deepest mistakes.